I'm not dead.
What?
I'm not dead. I'm getting better.
No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
I feel fine.
It was beautiful, and that's genuinely what I thought of the Unification video. That's what I thought of the Regeneration video. It's aesthetically pleasing. In terms of what I feel like it represents for canon, is a step backwards. I mean this in a most sincere way. Like, some people never liked the death of Captain Kirk in Star Trek Generations, particularly older fans, but nobody really felt that it lived up to the hype of Star Trek Generations. Even though, and I'm going to attest to this, in this video, Gary Seven does something, the guy from Discovery does something, then he's in the Kelvin timeline, and he sees Spock on his deathbed. It's sweet. It looks amazing. But it to me, takes away from Kirk's actual death in Star Trek Generations. But this isn't the first time that they've tried to take away from Kirk's death in Star Trek Generations. We should mention that directly after Star Trek Generations, within a year or two, William Shatner released a series of books where he was resurrected by the Borg. And he went on some wacky adventures. I, to be honest, never read these books. Because to me, TNG was my series, right? TOS, I liked the movies. I don't think I'd really watched any of the original series. I'd watched maybe some of the movies. So to me, I didn't have that emotional connection of TOS. I had the movie connection, and the death of Kirk, while may not living to other people's expectations, felt like the right thing to do. It's not a Jamie Lee Curtis situation where she gets killed in the first 10 minutes of, I think it was Halloween Resurrection. It's not that sort of sequel mentality of, let's just have them in for a little bit just to get the viewership and then they're gone. My biggest issue with it, particularly we'll take a look at from Generations. Generations' theme was about coming to terms with loss, understanding that you've got to make the most of what you have, and always striving to achieve what you want to achieve. Never look to the past, always look to the future and making it better for yourself. And standing up for what you believe in and doing things that matter, which is what Captain Kirk does in that film. Captain Kirk in Generations is the catalyst for Picard to sort of go, no, I can keep moving forward. Even though things have happened and they hurt and they're horrible, I can keep going forward. Soren mentions to Picard midway through Generations that
they say time is the fire in which we burn. Right now, Captain, my time is running out. We leave so many things unfinished in our lives. I know you understand.
Time as a predator, hunting him down pretty much until he dies. At the end of the film, Picard's talking to Riker, and he's talking about how he prefers to think of time as a companion.
Someone once told me that time was a predator that stalked us all our lives. But I rather believe that time is a companion who goes with us on the journey, reminds us to cherish every moment, because they'll never come again. What we leave behind is not as important as how we've lived. After all, Navarre, we're only mortal.
With him on the journey and reminding him to make the most of that time. Now, if we take this in the context of Star Trek Generations and Captain Picard, it's about getting over the loss of things that he didn't achieve, not having children, his nephew Rene dying and his brother dying. dying in a fire. Like, it's a big emotional thing for Picard, and Kirk is the catalyst for Picard to get up and do something that matters while he still can. And within Generations, which is not a perfect movie, but within Generations, that theme of getting back up, dusting yourself off and going on is a Kirk theme. It's something we see from Kirk when we hear about the Kobayashi Maru from Star Trek 2, when we see Kirk lose his son in Star Trek 3. He gets back up and he keeps doing things that matter. In terms of, we'll move away from Generations now. In terms of Kirk as a character, in the TOS series, we saw Kirk being young, rambunctious, heroic, a real action hero and ladies' man. In Star Trek, the motion picture, and through Star Trek 6, we saw a character and characters, but specifically Kirk, Spock, McCoy, dealing and grappling with progression, time, age, their worth within the Star Trek universe.
This is not about age. And you know it. It's about you flying a goddamn computer console when you want to be out there hopping galaxies.
Spare me your notions of poetry, because we all have our assigned duties.
Paul, you're hiding. Hiding behind rules and regulations.
Who am I hiding from?
From yourself.
Kirk in Star Trek 2 is dealing with the loss of his relationship, seeing his son growing a bit older, wanting to command a starship again, doesn't want to train, like he wants to matter. Star Trek 3, he loses his son, but he also gains back his friend of whom he's lost. Spock dying in Star Trek 2 gutted Kirk. In Star Trek 3, in order to keep the sacrifice but bring back Spock, they kill Kirk's son. And Kirk deals with that later on as well. In Star Trek 4, we get a Kirk who's sort of being a bit of a renegade, doing the things that matter, trying to save Earth. Star Trek 4 is a very fun film. The Final Frontier is a bit of return to form. They talk about being sort of old and a bit sort of wacky and stuff like that, and it's more about the relationships. Star Trek 6, we go back to this theme of these characters are older now. These characters are about to outlive what they consider to be their usefulness. The things that matter to them, the things that mean to them, they won't be able to do anymore. And we get this excellent sort of last hurrah for Kirk as captain of the USS Enterprise.
It's about the future, Madam Chancellor. Some people think the future means the end of history. Well, we haven't run out of history quite yet. Your father called the future the undiscovered country. People can be very frightened of change.
You've restored my father's faith.
And you've restored my son's.
In Star Trek Generations, we start off with him going aboard the Enterprise B and being treated like this ancient hero because he hasn't been active, he hasn't mattered. And he uses the Enterprise B situation to matter again. And when he goes into the Nexus, the thing that Picard teaches Kirk is that the Nexus is not real. You need to matter. And it reminds Kirk that he needs to matter and he needs to go in and do it. This is why the OTOY, I don't mind the Remembrance one where Spock visits Kirk's grave after Kirk is dead in Star Trek Generations. I think that might have happened. I think that's a logical way for it to happen. In terms of the return books, I don't even consider them part of canon. They're not. In terms of his body showing up in Picard, I'm like, okay, it's an Easter egg. It'll never come to anything. And then we see the OTOY, a unification, and it's a beautifully well done. Sam Witwer manages the mannerisms of Kirk really well. The way they did it, Sarek returning with Spock's son, having Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner as their former selves appearing together is amazing. It looks really good, but it takes away from the growth of Kirk as a character. Kirk isn't a character that never dies. Kirk is a character that makes the most of the life he lives. Now, in terms of, obviously, this is a tribute to Leonard Nimoy, and it's an amazing sort of send off to Leonard Nimoy and Spock as a character, the original actor and the original character. It's a lovely moment of them being together again, but it does, having Kirk being there, take away from the first video, Remembrance, but also from all the things that Kirk's death meant. Frequently in cinema, bringing a character back to life takes away the way that characters die. An example being Picard had his own journey in Star Trek Picard Season 1 to finding something that matters and realizing that he can go and protect it. And he dies protecting something he believes in and he thinks that matters, which is something I think he learnt from Kirk. When he comes back as his synth self, he's very much about moving forward in things and dealing with things. He's much more of a go-getter, and he's trying to matter again. And that's what Kirk does in Star Trek 6, in Generations, because when he passes away, he passes away. Now, even Picard in Generations mentions that there are fewer days before than are ahead. And this is very apt for me. I'm about to approach my 40th birthday, which means there's already less days ahead than there is behind. And making the most of life is a big message. And I think taking away, and it's a completely 21st century Star Trek problem. An example being Brent Spiner returning for every season of Star Trek Picard, Data returning twice, really takes away from Data's death in Nemesis and the sort of grieving process he had in Picard Season 1, because you brought him back in Season 3. In terms of, like, even Picard Season 1 had sort of an epilogue to it. I don't mind that there's an epilogue to Kirk's death. At the same time, Kirk's death meant something to the Star Trek universe. It was symbolic of mattering, symbolic of recognizing that Kirk was the face of Star Trek and Picard was now the face of Star Trek. And it was that sort of handing of the baton. It was a huge amount of growth for Picard's character and an acceptance of who Kirk is to himself, someone who fights the good fight to save millions of people. And while people might go, oh, he died rather lacklusterly, being crushed by a bridge, he died saving millions of people. So you take away from this heroic death and this heroic situation. So summarizing, this video is primarily about Kirk being, to me, dead. And that sounds terrible. And it's just my opinion. Everyone has their opinion. Not all of them are good. Not all of them you agree with. But to me, Kirk is dead. He's dead. If his body is in, as far as I'm concerned, the OTOY videos aren't canon. They're just sort of a bit of fun to add a little bit of stuff. Clearly, they've got support of a Star Trek producer or two or Paramount. But to me, making Kirk alive again takes away from Kirk's death, Picard's growth, from the film Generations in general, and takes away from his growth as a character from a very two-dimensional TOS captain to a man accepting his age and accepting that he's still useful in a universe no matter what age he is and how much he's grown, changing, getting everything about Captain Kirk. Every single movie was about Kirk grappling with the change and getting older, and it would make sense to culminate in him passing away and passing that legacy onto someone else, which in Generations is Captain Jean-Luc Picard. What did you think of the OTOY videos? Do you consider them canon? Do you just consider them a little bit of fun? Do you consider them to be fantastic? I think it looks fantastic. My biggest issue was that Kirk didn't talk. Like, I can't imagine Kirk being that quiet for that long, or not even making any noises. In terms of everything, I think we got a lot of fun out of it. But is it Kirk's journey? No. I think Kirk's rightful death is still Star Trek Generations. So tell me what you think in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, and come back on Thursday for the finale of Star Trek Lower Decks. Sundays for a Star Trek Voyager review, and there is plenty more coming up in 2025 for TrekTrav and all of our Star Trek content.